We're back as we are every Saturday morning. Wouldn't be anywhere else to be right now.
Already saw Johnny. Good morning, Johnny. How you doing, man?
I know, it's crazy. Johnny's been waiting. Man, what a week. Past weekend, I went to Bitcoin Veterans Summit. Travis is a part of that. And helped chaperone me that direction, and I made it to Nashville. I'll tell you what an interesting group, different than any other, say, conference you might go to. I was just telling Daniel offline here about the quality and the nature of the people going there. It was completely based. Guys that are there for very focused, mission-driven reasons. Smart guys. People, quite a few came up. I had MicroSeed stuff there, and a good chunk of them, maybe half of them, were quite aware of MicroSeed, and if they weren't, they wanted to talk everything self-custody. And some of these guys, when they were in their service, they were working on intelligence, ciphers, language, math stuff, or just whatever. They're just into that, the core technicalities of everything. And if you're working at one layer, what's the layer underneath that? And when you understand that layer, what's the layer underneath that? And just diving down into the core elements of how all of this stuff works the way it works, with a big, broad perspective on what in the heck is going on in the world, which is another aspect to it, in terms of taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, your community, and growing, and just never being stuck in a rut, moving through an OODA loop, all the time, just navigating reality and paying attention to what's going on economically, and just, whether it's foreign policy or anything else. These guys were solid. I was blown away by the quality of the conversations I had during the event, afterwards at dinner, wherever, out on the shooting range. We had a range day, shooting out in 25-degree frozen mud that then thawed out into mud. But we did a lot of shooting. But man, these guys were into taking care of yourself and other people around you in your circle, from the physical world into the spiritual world, and just through and through being a whole person who is capable and a leader, I guess you'd say. There's a lot of leadership qualities that is hard for people to push when it's something new or you're under stress, and they are just trained in that. So I was impressed. Amazing group. So
yeah,
surprisingly cold. I mean, it should have been like 50 or 60 degree, and then on Mondays, even a bit Sunday, it was snowing. So,
yeah.
But it was cool.
Yeah, I ended up missing that whole trip. That little air traffic control shortage, I don't know if that was a bunch of political theater or what they were doing, but it certainly impacted a lot of people, and I was one of them. And the thing that kind of frustrated me about it was, I took off from Albuquerque, and everything was all systems go. It was easy to get on the plane. There was no problem. The plane took off right away. And, by the time I landed in Dallas for my connecting flight, I was in the air 2 hours, and somewhere in the middle of that 2 hours, oh, your next flight's canceled. I'm like, you couldn't have told me that before I left Albuquerque. It would have been nice to know, so I didn't have to go and So, with all the chaos, I ended up just kind of stuck in Dallas for a couple of days and just ended up goofing off. But yeah, it sounded like it was an awesome trip, man. I wish I could have been there. So yeah.
Yeah, people get it. People get what we're doing. And I mean, you go to other conferences. Well, I'll compare it to, say, Vegas or even Portland, where we're at Portland. A real mix of people. You get people that are into Bitcoin, but they're still learning and they're still navigating, and they have questions, or people would come up with questions about things, and you realize they're still figuring some stuff out, which is good and fine.
Oh yeah,
man. At this conference, I tell you, people were just like, "Oh no, I get it. Like, have you thought about this? And what about this? And can you do this? And hey, could you do this?" And it's just like, wow, all to a person, these people are dialed in. It was incredible. So
that's awesome, man. Yeah, I can't wait to meet them all probably next year. But our next big thing is going to be down in El Salvador. We're doing the golf tournament, right? So that's
Yeah.
quick here,
Yeah.
which I think is going to be hopefully a lot of fun. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I've never been to El Salvador and get to hang out with Max and Stacy and other kind of hopefully pretty deeply orange pilled people and be out in the sun while everyone else is freezing their tucuses off back here in the States, and it'll be fun.
That's one thing. Yeah, that'll be fun. Now, one thing that it came up at the end of the conference at the wrap up. Actually, it's like, you know what? People who pay attention to the price, and there's a lot of conversation we can have about the nature of where we're at in the macro market, the Bitcoin market. What is it? A bear market? Are we in it? Are we pulling? Is it just beginning? Are we pulling out of it? At the Bitcoin Veterans Summit, there was not one discussion about the price of Bitcoin, or any fiat, anything. Everybody knew why they're into Bitcoin. It wasn't like trading in, trading out, making gains. It was based. It was like, we all know why we're in Bitcoin, and it's not to get rich on high fructose corn syrup. It's Bitcoin is the fix and needs to be the property, the money, right. and is integrating itself steadily. But we're in it for reasons, not for just gains.
Yeah. Which is probably very refreshing.
It was. I mean, in Vegas and elsewhere. I mean, it's just the nature of the talk. It's like number go up stuff, which, right. I mean, I'm not against it, but also the thought goes through my mind, when it goes down, my fiat translates better to holding for me. So
yeah. Well, I mean, that was I was on Roxham TV yesterday and talking with that guy, and we were talking a little bit about some of the macro stuff, and I mean, it's kind of a broad spectrum show, and they talk about current events and things like that, but one of the things we were talking about was like the Bitcoin price and what's going on with Bitcoin price and this and that and the other thing. One of the things I said to him, and I think I've probably said this here before, but like, if you had a house, you don't move into your house and go, okay, we just paid 70 grand for this house or 100 grand for this house or whatever, right? And then a year later, you're like, oh my God, the house is now worth 150. Oh, should we sell? Should we buy? Oh my God, the house price is going down again. I don't know, maybe we should get Now, obviously, you don't think that way for a number of reasons, right? Like, it's not liquid. Like, you can't just go on, house.com and sell your house for, or sell part of your house or whatever to make sure that you're maximizing your house gains. But I think it behooves people to treat Bitcoin in a similar way, because, like, if you're one of the people that bought a house in like 1995 and you paid 100 grand for your condo or whatever it is, and you just kind of look back today, whatever, 30 years later, and go, oh, now that thing I spent $100,000 on in 1995 is worth 1.2 million. Huh, that was a pretty good deal, pretty good trade. But you'd never think about it in between, right? Like, you're not watching every little dip and every little thing and every little housing crash. You just, as long as you can afford the payment, you just kind of sit in and go, well, I need the house. House is where I live, and yada, yada, yada. But you just store it, and then, magically number go up. And I think if you treat Bitcoin the same way, it's probably better for your mental health and kind of aligns better with like a longer time horizon, right? Like, if you buy $100,000 of Bitcoin today and just sit on it and just wait 20 years and look back and go, oh shit, that thing's worth a lot of money now. And just like a house, you could probably, borrow against it and take out a second mortgage on your Bitcoin or whatever, however they're going to figure that shit out in the future. But still, you get what I'm saying, right? Like, yeah, it's pointless to sit there and fret about every single little, dip and bobble and wobble on the way. And the broader point is like, I think you've said it before, Fred, it's like, what else are you going to do? Like, yeah, you could go buy a house or whatever, but unless you can pay cash for the house, and you certainly can't buy a fraction of a house, right? You can't buy, well, I'm just going to get one living room and I'll just sit on that for a few years and see how it goes, right? But you can do that with Bitcoin. So that's kind of the overall thesis there, at least in terms of price action or whatever.
Yeah. Dr. White, might have saw your Roxham interview, the MicroSeed invention, asking for a friend. We should come up with MicroSeed. We'll sell dick pills or something too, based pills.
I haven't figured out the micro penis thing yet. We're working on it. That's in
We're
development.
working on that.
Yeah,
We got
in development right now.
new developments forthcoming for
We're gonna
sure.
partner with that chick from, who's that chick? Elizabeth Holmes. We're gonna partner with her.
Oh yeah,
She's got some
magic box.
magic box thing that, with a single finger prick and a little bit of blood, she can just.
We can do everything with this one tiny little device.
Yeah. She's hot, by the way. Have you noticed that? Like,
I haven't seen her since she came out of prison.
I think she's still in prison, dude. But she's she's still in prison, but somehow she's getting selfies out or whatever. And but she had a selfie out with like no makeup on. I was like, wow, this chick's like hot. Oh my god,
she's primed for the next scam.
Oh yeah, well, her and Skrelly, I think, are gonna like hook up and turn into like the next whatever monster they create. But
yeah, magic coin. The gestalt of a house, a home. It's like, I mean, you could track its number value day by day, making a comparison, but your home, your homestead, your property that way that you live with, the gestalt of it is much more than, oh, what's the current market value? It's like a place you live, a place you build up and invest in, considerations about, where is your water? Do you have timber? What kind of food and sunshine do you have? Could you garden? Can you raise chickens? Do you like goats? And is your family comfortable and happy? And your warmth, you're cool. It's a livelihood you build up and everything. And so to make the comparison to Bitcoin, where it's the freedom, escape hatch future of property in another sense. It's not like, well, gee, how much in fiat Fed coin can it buy right now?
Right.
Not that it's not a consideration, but I'm always curious, how does it tether into broader economic things? But it's my home. So it's where I live. Bitcoin is where I live. So
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's obviously a very different asset, right? And yet there's that idea of like, well, if you just treat it as property, like the same thing of like if you owned a house and then you bought, 50 acres in Montana or something like that, or 500 acres in Montana, hopefully you wouldn't be the kind of person that's like, you bought the land in Montana for a reason, and it wasn't just to like watch the fiat price bounce up and down. But I'm familiar with Holmes' brother too. So yeah, he died though, didn't he? He's like super dead. Like, didn't he catch the AIDS or something?
Who? I've never heard of this guy.
John Holmes.
I don't know.
Come on, dude. Just Google it.
Oh, okay. I got to do some research here.
That was, I think it was Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights is
there you go.
Yeah.
Yes, the cycles. At one point, I was thinking, I think the model has broken. It's not about the 4-year cycle, yada, yada. Meanwhile, I was telling you earlier, true. Nice, Johnny. Nick Szabo had posted something pricing Bitcoin and gold, and how like basically his impression being we've been in a bear market. And he even ever since the Trump got elected, like a year ago, like we've been in a bear market priced in gold. And that basically what has helped float Bitcoin to some extent has been the monetary debasement trade, where people are like recognizing the fiat collapsing and are moving into gold or other things, Bitcoin say. And again, you have big whales, old wallets moving. You have people taking their fiat gains because they've done their time, or they can. You've got the treasury companies and all the treasury games going on there. So it's a mix of a lot of stuff. But it could be that, I mean, if you're pricing it in fiat, Bitcoin is in its typical, maybe cyclical bearish time for a while.
Maybe. I mean, that's the weird thing about it, right? Like, it's funny. Like, yes, the whales have been moving, but I think there's something to be said about the influence of the ETFs and these larger, like TradFi financial groups getting involved in Bitcoin. And one of the things I pointed out yesterday on Roxom was, there's this sort of algorithmic aspect to the way finance gets handled today, right? Like 30 or 40 years ago, it was a bunch of guys sitting around smoking cigarettes in a room trying to figure out what the next move is and trying to glean like what the Fed, what it means when the Fed says their little minutes or whatever. And today, all that stuff is sort of controlled by a computer, right? Like they go, well, we execute trades based on criteria and data. And so the thing is, it tends to mute like price rises, right? Like I think you can see that sort of little stair step action that we've seen since, the bull market started in Bitcoin back in, whatever that was, 2022, 23, whenever the 16,000 low was or 15,000 low.
Yeah.
From that time, it's been kind of a stair step up, right? Like you're taking the stairs up. But I think that is more an indicator of like these large players doing TradFi things, right? Like one of those algorithms says, hey, take profits, right? Like you need to, if you have an investment, you need to take profits. So all the way up, they're always selling off, right? There's always that steady selling pressure despite the price rise, because every time it goes up, some algorithm kicks in and goes, hey, we just crossed 1.5% profit on this trade, which puts us in this, zone. So we need to now sell off to realize that gain. And meanwhile, as it stair steps up, if something goes the other direction, if it starts dropping rapidly, then all the same algorithms go, okay, we need to reduce losses. So you get this natural from the big behemoths that are coming into the space, like the ETFs and the loan companies and the, derivative companies like Strategy or whatever. They have this Strategy is not one of them because they're not selling on the way up, but all these other companies that have this sort of Bitcoin exposure, and especially the ETFs, are selling on the way up. And then they sell on the way down too, right? So they dampen the rise and magnify the loss. So I think that's kind of playing out right now. But in terms of that cyclical thing, it's really hard to say, right? Like as me and Fritz were talking about offline, like there is a thing. I can actually share it if you guys
Yeah.
But I'll share this. Yeah. So this is the Bitcoin chart, right? And this goes all the way back to Genesis here. And I would point out there's like a very clear pattern that emerges if you zoom in. So this is from Genesis to the first like cycle high, right? You're looking at about 600 days roughly to that first cycle high, right? And then from that cycle high, so if you go, there's 600 there to the low, it was about roughly, what is that, 800 days? So you're talking 600 days to get to the high, and then it was another 200 or 300 days after that to get to the low. But if you go to the first halving, you'll start to see this pattern emerge. You go, hey, from the halving to the cycle high, it was about 400 days there, roughly 371. But then to the low, it was another, wherever you pick that as being the low, you got another 500-600 days after that. So very kind of clear thing starting to emerge here. Not quite ironed out yet, but next halving after that, it's 500 days of the high. Oops, I keep clicking off there. So you go 500 days of the high, and then that next low is, realized right around, 300 or 400 days after that. And then if you go to the next one, lo and behold, guess what happens? You go, how long was it? Well, from here, you go, okay, it was about 500 days to the high and, another 400 or 500 days to the low. And now guess where we're at? If you just take a look at it, you go, well, we're about 500 days to the high. And, that next low, you're looking at, if it's 400 or 500 days later, you're putting yourself right at the end of 2026. But if you take that, each one of those historical drawdowns has been about 60 or 70%. If you go down 60% from that high, that puts us at, like a $50,000 Bitcoin. If you go down to the traditional drop of about 75%, it puts us at a $30,000 Bitcoin, right? So it's just one of those things like this doesn't mean anything ultimately, right? This is just sort of like that's what happened, but it doesn't mean that's what's going to continue happening. So it's hard to put a lot of stock in it. But when you start talking about people going, hey, well, is this time different or is this time not different or whatever? You go, well, I don't know what would necessarily make that different this time around. There's still people buying, there's still people selling, and the people that are moving the markets are the same people. It's just there's a different class of people that are coming in to soak up the the stuff. It's still the whale selling, and it's just a different category of buyers buying, right?
Yeah.
But the days of retail moving things, I think, are long past, right? Like I think once January 2024 rolled around and the ETFs came online, like the retail market is not the thing that's shaking things up now, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it'll be interesting to see if this thesis plays out, but it would be kind of hilarious if it kind of continued. I just love to see all the super maxis. If we ended up at a $45,000 Bitcoin a couple of years from now, I would be tickled pink. I would love it, love it, love it. I'd be stacking sats like crazy. But for everyone else,
I wouldn't mind be able to say, go out on a limb and could you get yourself a whole Bitcoin now, brother? And you're going to see a lot of, I think you're going to see a lot of these for a while now. Recent-ish Bitcoin influencers having to reconcile how fiat are you, how into Bitcoin are you? Like it's easy to have a lot of insights and positivity or bullishness when you're riding it. But I remember, was it 2021 or whatever it was, and semi checks going out and all that stuff. But I was riding it up and feeling all that.
right?
And then as it went down from whatever a high of, I mean, the 60s or maybe it touched 70, I can't remember.
It was like 68, 69.
68.
Right.
And it went down to, like the teens.
Yeah, 15.
And I rode that puppy down. And through that process for a good year there, I just held on to my base principles and studied more and was like, what would it mean to be out? Why would I do that? I'm not doing that. But why? And it was a good learning experience for me. So people that have been into, say, Bitcoin for a while now, you'd feel, are going to go through that if it's their first time. And you're going to see various interesting and funny FUD or who knows what, but you're going to see the fiat come out or it's going to test them and they're going to recommit their why. I think in a way, it's a healthy thing to go through. It's the volatility, but it's going to happen. People are going to have to grapple with this.
Well, part of the Bitcoin's blessing is the liquidity of the market, and it's also its curse, right? Like unlike a house, like I think if the housing market were deeply liquid, I think you'd see a lot more volatility in the housing market, right? But the housing market's not deeply liquid. Like it takes time to sell a house, and you can't just do it on a whim, and you can't just wake up on a Saturday and go, "Oh my God, I read a thing on Twitter and it says the economy's going to collapse. I need to sell all my houses right now." Like you just can't do it, right? So but the same thing that happens to the levered housing bros is going to happen to the levered Bitcoin bros. Like they just get wrecked over and over and over and over and over again. So the housing bros that catch it on the upswing tend to do pretty well as long as they don't keep trying to do it when it swings down. But the housing bros that kind of FOMO in at the top just absolutely get slaughtered, And they're not the ones that get on Twitter and talk about how they made $5 million this year on their housing, gambles because they went to a seminar at the Marriott that said this is how you flip real estate, right? And so like there's those old tropes. Everybody's a genius in a bull market, and you'll find out who's wearing a bathing suit when the tide goes back out. And I'm kind of mixing metaphors now, but I don't know. I think it would be interesting to see what happens if the tide really does go back out. Like I think it would be kind of like for me, I'm sort of in it and I just don't care, right? Like I don't look at it like to me it's my real estate. It's my virtual real estate. I just sit there and just let it be what it is. And to your point, frequently, Fritz, you just go, what else am I going to get into? Like, what am I going to go like? Oh, well, it's a bear market now. I'm going to go ape into Nvidia stock or something. Like, it's insane, right? Like,
right. So what's the solution here? Really, are you going to have property and money in the future? Yes.
Right.
Okay. So what do you want that to be?
Yeah.
Look back at what it is that you would ever sit on. What is it? When the conference was over and I was traveling back and I kind of checked back in on what's been going on in the world and I see the price. I'm like, oh, Okay, interesting. And studying up on kind of the moving and shaking going on out there, the rumblings discussion going on. You know what really clinched it for me to be like, this is why I Bitcoin was the announcements. Was it this week? I can't remember. 15-year car loans, 50-year mortgages.
Yeah.
I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You get a 15-year car loan and your car is maybe dead or junk, or I mean, depending on the car you buy, your car is done, and you still owe money on it, or you're dead and your house is not paid off.
Yeah.
It's generational debt. And what's the analogy of what that type of economy is to all of us peasants? It's a feudal system. It's um, the king and the lords and his vassals. It trickles down in terms of whatever ownership that is, down to us who never own anything, but we can have access to it all, and they'll lend us credit or leverage like as much as we want to dig our hole.
Damn.
And go dig, kids. Go, yeah, you can have that thing or the other thing, or maybe you can get in, and you have established yourself in your 20s with lifelong debt, and you are now a peasant. You're tilling grass on the Lord's manor for your life,
Yeah.
the
Well,
rest of your life.
right? That's the whole point of money. It's funny you mentioned the creatine powder and electrolytes. That's pretty funny. Like I've been doing creatine, but I quit doing like a big heavy meat based diet. So I found that eating a lot of meat and drinking a bunch of creatine is a recipe for like I create a toxic gas chamber where I sleep. It is
You're
unbelievable.
detoxing.
No, I am toxifying. Like it is absolutely foul, dude. Like I go, oh my god, like I have to sleep with the window open basically, or else I'm seriously concerned that I will gas myself to death.
Dutch roast yourself in a Dutch oven.
Like that, it's just astonishing. I'm like, I don't know how I can produce such a toxic fume. Like this is unbelievable. But yeah, I actually switched to a mostly vegetable protein based diet. So yeah, I'm almost 95% vegan now. Like I eat about 8 ounces of liverwurst every week, and that's my supplement of the meat world. And the rest of it, all the steaks and everything, just went away. Like it's all lentils and tofu and shit like that now. But I have an evidence-based diet, so how about that?
Yeah, you're well, and everybody's body is different, and sometimes you try something for a week and you feel really different, and maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but yeah, it's hard to know, to dial in for yourself what works. But I tell you, processed food generally is not going to help me.
Not to divert, but I saw the creatine thing and I was like, yeah, but creatine is definitely a win. You definitely want to have some creatine in your diet. Collagen's another one. You want to get some good collagen in there. But yeah, in terms of getting like good iron and all that kind of stuff, like I think it's really hard to argue with animal sourced like hemi iron and things like that. But yeah, the rest of it, like macking down on 10 ribeyes a week, I go, I don't know if there's not a lot of evidence that supports that as a healthy way of eating. But like I ran my current diet through the robot, and the robot's like, dude, this is outstanding, man. Like you are tops in all, at least in terms of like high quality research. You go, I'm hitting all the metrics. I think I might even be better than the Brian Johnson wackadoodle guy that's measuring every goddamn little weird thing.
You're feeling good though.
Yeah, feels great, man. So it's yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll end up with butt cancer or something like a year from now. I'll be like, damn it, I should have kept eating fucking steaks. But you never know. So
if I'm on more of a fiat diet, what I find is that what I consider to be normal in terms of amount of food I should eat, or what feeling satiated is, I'll think in my head, I just need to eat so much, or I eat this much. And when I've switched over to more meat based or whole foods and stuff, I just don't eat that much. I'll have what seems like a normal amount of food, and I'll eat half of it. And I'm just like, I'll almost think something's wrong. Like, oh, this isn't sitting well. The thing is, though, I'm just full.
right.
I'm full, and I just need to stop eating. Don't overeat because there's stuff left on my plate. There's a whole guilt trip, but I'll save it for later. But I eat less, and then I'll also hit a thing where I'm just not hungry.
Yeah.
Like, so do I need to eat? And so anyway, yeah, it's a shift. So that's right, Marley.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
it's fiat food,
Yeah.
and it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. And when the cost of real based goods go up, the appearances of what you see on the shelf can seem like number can seem the same, or we all see the prices going up, but what comes in a box or the industrial waste that's packaged for cheap, yeah, it's still affordable, or you want to eat cheaply, but it's more and more diluted garbage or sawdust or whatever seed oil stuff. So it's killing your health. That's
Yeah.
right.
Well, Johnny, it sounds like you're on the Walt Whitman diet. I don't know if you're ever familiar with that guy, but he had a bunch of writings back in the day where he's like, if you want to see all the evils of the modern world, just look at all these people that are sitting around eating cake and, you know, having these big lavish meals and all this stuff. He said, I just have a steak and a piece of bread and I'm good. You know, so I mean, he's kind of an OG carnivore, I guess. I don't know.
I was going through some old stuff.
Harley, I think you're right too, man. I mean, it's definitely like it's a very deflationary health thing, but I mean, I kind of liken it all back to the resource extraction game. Like, if you can feed people like industrial food like substances and then extract a lot of value out of them by doing that, you can inflate your pocketbook while they slowly die. But then it turns into this whole like extractive game where it's like, hey, we can keep these people fat and happy, and they'll just sit there munching on Doritos all day long and thinking they're just doing great, and they can't help themselves because we figured out behaviorally how to modify them to get them to just continually crave Doritos and Taco Bell and, you know, a bunch of nonsense. Right down to the texture of the food. They go, hey, this is just enough texture that you have to chew it, but not enough that your body feels like it's satiated. So cool, that's a nice addictive thing. We'll add some just enough salt and just enough fat to make it like really, really, really desirable, and then throw some sugar in there just to really ramp up the, you know, the spikes. All this stuff equates to you eating a lot more. It doesn't cost us anything, and then we can pass on that profit model to our medical buddies who also can just fill you full of pills and stuff. And, you know, and then there's a whole like diet and exercise industry that can get born on top of that on how to fix all this stuff by doing all these crazy other things and buying shake weights and, you know, whatever. Meanwhile, all that happens is everybody gets fatter, 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 more and more sick, and the people at the top of the chain make more and more money, you know? So it's the same exact process as like locking a chicken in a coop, filling it full of antibiotics, and then a bunch of like weird growth hormones and stuff to make their legs swell up. Never mind, they can't even support their own weight. But I mean, you can look around in just any Walmart and you go, hey, there's a whole bunch of people in here that can't support their own weight. So I don't know how different we are than the chickens. You know what I
mean? Yeah, that's another thing. If like flying to Nashville and just doing my cursory observations of humanity and the population, the herd out there, it's like, my goodness, there's some sick people in the world, and they're managing. I mean, you got a train of wheelchairs and people getting escorted around them. It's like Wally on the cruise ship or something. But yeah, it's health debasement, and it is also quite economic, the industrial food system. So
yeah. Well, I didn't mean to deviate from the generational debt, but Johnny brought up the creatine thing.
Generational debt, generational health debasement, and you know, I mean, younger kids, generations these days don't know necessarily what's going on or what to do about it. So it's down with whatever, vote in whatever. They're feeling left behind, and
yeah.
So I mean, we all feel it to an extent. Hence, Bitcoin. This is why we Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Anyway, the 15-year car loans, the 50-year mortgages, all of that is just, it's like, okay, we're kicking this can even further, like overtly, like, hey, this is our new normal. This is okay. And I went straight to feudal system thinking like, wow, we are being farmed.
Well, we never weren't, you know, I mean, just because there was a generation of people that got to get close to the money printer doesn't necessarily mean they weren't being farmed as well. And, you know, there's an example. I'm writing a new book, right? And the new book, I mentioned a thing. There's I can't remember what country they went to in Africa, but the British went down there and they were colonizing or, you know, invading or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. But they said, hey, we need to build some roads and a port, and we need to do all this stuff. And there's a bunch of these Africans just kind of laying around not doing anything, and they don't want to work for us, right? So how can we convince these people to work? Well, let's do a hut tax. What's a hut tax? Well, if you live in a hut, you have to pay tax to be in there. Well, how am I supposed to pay that tax? Well, you got to have British money. Well, how do I get British money? Well, you got to come work for us, and then you can afford to pay the tax. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. When people talk about the origins of money, like, oh, it solved the problem of barter, it did this or that, I go, that's all nonsense. It didn't. That's not the way this game got played out. That might be the way the economists of the world want to make it look like a neutral medium of exchange or some natural outflow of markets and, you know, the nature of markets and all this kind of thing. But the markets follow the money. The money didn't follow the markets. And that's where I think people get really tripped up on the modern world. And if you just want to see the way that plays out, like you're looking at it right now, it's a 50-year loan. But what that is it's just the same thing as like you're a feudal serf. It's just we've abstracted what that serfdom looks like. We've abstracted it to a unit of account on a ledger somewhere, and you are beholden to it forever. You are tied to the palace economy now, and you can't leave, because if you do, you're going to starve. You can't exist without coming up with a way to pay for all the other trappings of the modern world, because all the trappings of the modern world are owned by somebody. So like Travis was saying a couple of weeks ago, like, yeah, well, you know, 50% of people don't even pay a tax, but they're just paying it in a diffuse, abstracted way, because there's not 50% of the people not paying tax and they're growing a garden and going out hunting and doing some foraging to get their food. There's 50% of the people that are beholden to another system that is also extracting from other people to pay for them. But then meanwhile, they're taking the fruits of that extraction and then feeding it back into the system. So it's just creating more resources for people to extract at the top. Regardless if you call it a tax or not, all those people on welfare have to buy food somewhere. And that food somewhere creates a profit for somebody else somewhere. And all those people have to get medical care somewhere. And that provision of medical services creates a profit for somebody else somewhere. And, you know, their public transportation creates a profit for somebody. Like, all of these things still create a profit for somebody. And that profit becomes a source of revenue for the state. So that extraction game is happening the exact same way, but it's the exact same thing as what you just pointed out. It's a feudal system. It's just refined, abstracted, and you get a lot more creature comforts out of the bargain. But it's a Faustian bargain to its core, you know, and just most people are immune to it because it's opaque and they don't see where it came from. But it's no different today than it was 5,000 years ago. We're going to thump you on the head if you don't participate in the system, period. And you don't get to opt out of it because we own everything. So you own nothing, we own everything. You will work for us because that's your only value to us as a resource. And they don't care about your rights or, you know, how you feel about things. You know, all that stuff's irrelevant. Can we get stuff out of you? Great. If we can't, then someone else will come along and figure it out better than we do. But that's the whole game, you know.
It's a highly refined, multifaceted extraction game trap. And growing up in the 80s, I mean, I remember, so let's say the Cold War, and it was, when I was a kid, it was clearly like the Russians or the USSR, you know, it was, there seemed to be this enemy, you know, that we were, it provided some sort of national consensus about things and a cultural identity about things. But I remember hearing about the Iron Curtain and how, like, you'd compare like what we had in America to what Russia's like economically, say, or also as far as the propaganda, the information, the Iron Curtain, what was allowed or not. It was very statist, and like that was wrong. And it's a veil that is less obvious now, but it's like we have the same systems where it's not like an Iron Curtain, but just cross the line, say something wrong, touch upon the become too much of an influencer, and then touch upon the wrong topic or foreign policy, you get whacked. I mean, I think some of the cancellation gasm we're going through in the past has subsided to an extent for some reasons, but it's still there. Yeah. I mean, you will get canceled, you will get banned, you will get labeled. Even if you're in a club, I see influencers out there that they're in the club, but then they deviate and there's a concerted whack on that. Like, don't go there. you don't go there.
Yeah.
So it's still there.
Yeah,
It's just,
100%, man.
like you said, it's like it's abstracted, it's refined, it's not obvious, it's made normal. It's like you are free. No, we are free. Well, with boundaries,
Yeah.
guardrails, rules. I mean, of course, there need to be rules, but what those rules are interesting to decipher.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
those rules, they're all universally for the resources, right? It's like farmer sets up rules for how the chickens interact, but the farmer doesn't have to obey chicken rules. The chickens have to obey chicken rules, right? And people say, well, there's international law, there's this or that, there's all these international norms. That's because the sovereigns have chosen to cooperate on a certain rule set. That doesn't necessarily mean they're beholden to those rules. And if you want evidence of it, just look at every single invasion the United States has done for the last 50 years, including Vietnam, or 60 years, whatever. They go, hey, how much international consensus was there for the need for any of these things to happen? Like zero, right? They just go strong arms a few allies to kind of help give them cover in terms of whatever it is they're trying to do. But all of them are direct violations of international norms, international law, and the pseudo. But all those rules that they tack on top of nation states are also for the benefit of the resources. The resources can look and go, hey, man, that's not fair. You're not supposed to do that. Just like the chickens in the farmer's ranch can look up at the farmers and go, hey, that farmer's not supposed to punch that farmer in the face. We're really mad and we're going to go strike as chickens. But the farmers don't care. They're duking it out for their reasons, and they're doing what they're doing because they're doing farmer things. They're not doing chicken things. So just because the chickens have a place to feel upset about how things look unfair about what the farmers are doing, it doesn't matter, right? Because ultimately they're still just a resource to the farmers, both farmers involved. And if you talk about Russia, like I remember all that propaganda in the 80s too, like, oh, Russia's this and that and the other thing. But if you talk to Russians back then, they go, this is all nonsense. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's not how it works here. But it was also not, it was obviously not as materially comfortable as it was in the West through that whole period. But if you look at the way the Russian system evolved, it was, a hereditary monarchy that got overthrown by communists, and the communists came in and extracted all the resources from the people below them so they could enrich themselves. Period. That was it. That's all that happened there. And so they used ideology and this and that and the other thing to marshal all the chickens to come over to their side, and then they drove the thing into the ground because that's all communism can do. It doesn't have a mechanism. It's like trying to impose sharing on a market process, and that just doesn't work. So what happened was that whole thing collapsed, and then all the people that amassed all the power in the background under the communist regime suddenly ganged up, turned into a bunch of thugs and warlords, and then they brought some semblance of structure back to the country. And once they brought some structure back to the country, they created a more market-aligned system because that's a system that works better, generally speaking. If you're a power seeker and you want to entrench and increase the amount of resources you control, you don't just extract from the people below you. You make them productive so they have more things that you are able to extract with and from.
Yeah.
And that's basically what's happened now. And whether or not this system in the United States continues on or whatever, because they will squeeze too far. They're already trying. They're already, people are already starting to get like, hey, you can't just keep taking from us. I have to work from cradle to grave, and I'm never able to get ahead.
There's less to squeeze.
Right. But sooner or later, some communist will come along and go, hey, we can redistribute all this wealth. It's so unfair, yada, yada, yada. And what they do is they come in, they start extracting resources just straight up. There is no productivity. Everything collapses around it. And you can see those machines of it right now. Like all that cancel culture and all that stuff is all driven by communist ideology. It's all a way for these people to come in and try and seize power. And they're being successful in some venues. Like New York just hired an outright socialist communist type statist mayor. And they are cropping up in areas, like the entire West Coast is captured by this ideology. The entire East Coast, save for maybe Florida and some of the southern states, is captured by this ideology. And those are major economic centers in the United States. And so we are fortunate in some regards that we have a great big chasm between them that is able to either withstand or embrace some of this stuff. But the net effect is always going to be extracting resources up and then collapsing the thing underneath them when the communists come in. And then the next thing that has to happen after that is some strongman has to come in and try and clean up the mess and restore some semblance of order. And, but then they get pilloried as being the fascist or whatever it is that the communists use, whatever insults they try and hurl. But either it reverts back to, either it kind of crunches down and everyone ends up poor and starving, and then someone else comes along and sort of remarshals it the other way. But again, the U.S. has a sort of structural benefit in just the way the country is laid out and what we have in terms of natural resources and things. So there's a lot of ability to resist that titanic shift. Like Russia had less opportunity to do that, and especially when it was the USSR. But even then, you saw all those satellite states fracture off, and you ended up with Mother Russia and everything else that they kind of captured under communism. So I don't know. It'll be an interesting thing to watch it all play out if I haven't gotten too esoteric here.
No, I mean, it aligns with what's happening. And I've got several thoughts here. But when I was in Nashville and a senator came and gave a speech, and there was a lot of discussion about how Tennessee as a state is very capable of being self-sufficient, could divest itself of the federal government more readily, like as much or more than Texas. Very fiercely independent feelings there, and discussion around politics being a route through which to take a stand, make a change, get involved, and change the tide. On the other hand, I feel like it's way too far beyond all that. I think I don't know that politics. Whenever, like, so even if you change the system, people will vote for the person who promises all the right things. And you promise, and you can even know stuff about how things could and should work. But you get into power and, okay, sorry, 38 trillion in debt. It's over. I mean, there's not a political solution. It's boiling down to the competitive resource capture game and the economics of where we're at now. So I just think I totally kind of ignore all the politics about it. People are excited to have the right person or the right speaker talking and involved and aware. I just don't think that it matters. They can say all the things. The deep state exists. If you compare it to the 80s and the oligarchs or the mob that was in charge on one side or the other competitively then and now, I feel like it's the mob playing the competitive resource capture game, and the front marketing surface of that, the human resources department, is very attuned to the needs and wants of the people and the promises. The mechanisms internally, different game.
Yeah.
And you can't even hardly know what that is. It's the farmers. The chickens are trying to understand what's the farmer doing over there now. Well, why did they start that tractor up?
Right. Yeah.
No, that's just they do that,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean that's exactly right. Like we don't know. Like as Jay Marley just said, like that parasite class grows, and it will grow into a place where they can no longer be sustained. And once that parasitic class gets, they will, like any other parasite, they'll overengorge, and then they'll either destroy themselves or the host. And typically speaking, like as the host is shriveling, there's going to be some other parasite that comes along and goes, hey, I can fix that parasite's problem. And then they engorge, and and it just depends on how effective the parasite is at keeping the host alive, right? The better the parasite, the less the host realizes it's being preyed upon. And I think that's ultimately like where you can frame the sort of quote unquote capitalist idealism is like, well, this is a highly effective parasite, but it still engorges. It still ends up in a place where it's just too big and fat, and the host can't sustain it anymore. And so some other parasite will come along and just, and they'll take that withered host and then they'll drain it to death. And then, a new set of parasites comes along and figures out how to wrangle everything better. But like Fritz just said, when the chickens are on the farm, they look at the farmer go and fire up a tractor and start plowing something and building stuff. They go, wow, what the hell is that guy doing? And they have no idea what the purpose of that structure of that thing is going to be. Does it mean that the farmer's going to build something so the chickens are more productive because they're free and they can range openly and they can peck, worms and eat, natural food? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it farmer creating something where those chickens are going to be locked up and put in a cage and the only thing can move is their head, and the rest of the time they're just there to make meat and eggs? But the chickens will never know, and they'll never know what factors led the farmer to think that way or to try and do that thing, because all the farmers are in competition for the same sort of resources, right? Each one of the farmers is trying to hoard its little share of chickens, and each one of the farmers is trying to get as much meat and eggs out of those chickens as it can. And how those farmers deal with that kind of stuff all boils down to statesmanship, right? And how powerful the farmer is. And like in the United States, we just happen to be the largest farm that makes all the seed food, right? So all the rest of the farmers are kind of beholden to us in that sort of game, right?
Yeah. The kickoff opening to the Bitcoin Veterans Summit, I had to look it up because I don't remember these people's names, but it was
What's up, Travis?
yeah,
you're right, man. There's no perch. That's precisely why Bitcoin is so important, because there is no place for the parasites to gain a foothold, because they have to trade for it. They can't just come and steal it.
They can't steal it from you. So meanwhile, hey, use the ETFs, keep it on the exchange, do all the things, because that's our walled garden on Bitcoin. Tennessee State Representative for the 25th District, Speaker of the Tennessee House of Representatives, Cameron Sexton. So he came. It was interesting because he had OSP security and these big guys in suits all standing around, and cool guy. I mean, he admitted, I don't know all the technicalities of Bitcoin, but I am pro economic philosophies that you share, I believe. And he's talking about the Tennessee Valley Authority and their grid and the mining coming on board with the utility districts and everything about it, and basically allowing Tennessee to kind of like Texas's grid system, being independent and managing, regulating that, but making it profitable, plugging in industries that can utilize energy. All that sounded really good. Average Gary, he wrote a good article on, I reposted it on my profile here, but Bitcoin veteran, he's a mining dev, smart guy, great guy. He was out on the range with us in my group, and he wrote a great article response regarding the Samurai Wallet case and how the state of Tennessee can protect digital privacy rights and development. Really good article. I reposted it. Eco had posted that, Eco Alchemist. Anyway, but it was good to have someone from politics go to this event and talk to it. Granted, these politicians are like a mile wide and an inch deep on stuff. And to be honest, I mean, they can be not against Bitcoin and really still not understand some of the fundamentals or how deep that goes. So, but anyway, the spirit is there. The spirit was good.
Yeah, I don't know. Every time I hear a politician talking like that, like, hey, I mean, especially some guy that's going to come along and say, hey, we can operate independently and yada, yada, yada. You just go look at your balance sheet of the state budget and see how much of it is beholden to federal funds, like their highways and their schools and their this and that and the other thing. And it's just like a constitutional sheriff. Like those guys will come up and go, I don't have to do, we're not going to support this. This is against the Second Amendment. And they have every legal authority to say that kind of stuff. But they still have a county board that comes along and goes, well, we control your purse, dude. So you can say that you're not going to do this, that, or the other thing, but we're just going to cut off your budget. So you're going to do some of this stuff because that's what's in our political interest. And it's the same thing with the states. The second a state comes along and goes, hey, we're going to do XYZ thing, the feds always have the option of going, oh, okay, we're going to withdraw all federal funding from your state. And then every politician in the state goes, wait, but my pet thing and all the stuff I promised my constituents, and we can't do that, guys. So they can come out and talk tough and act like they're this, that, or the other thing. But I don't think there is a state in the United States of America that doesn't accept just massive amounts of federal infusion.
Yeah,
that's sort of, he who wields the ledger wields control. Period. Hitler said it, and every ruler in the history of mankind has understood, like, hey, if I can control the mechanism of abstraction, if I can control how value gets abstracted in this society, I control this society. Period. And it's the same here in the federal system. It's not supposed to be that way, but paper promises are as good as the paper they're printed on. So this is the system we're in now, right?
Politicians, I mean, so you've got to have a vision. And what kind of a vision is oriented with reality, where you're going to get elected on a austerity conservative vision? No, you're going to get elected on promises and positivity to positive visions, fantastical as they may be. And then you're going to rely in your political processes on pork, and the states are on welfare. All this, pretty much, I think, all the states just rely and are used to have federal welfare. So it's like a welfare system for the states. So the states could say, hey, we're not going to do this. We're going to do our own thing and all that. And then a federal government can just say, oh, okay. So you don't need your transportation dollars, education dollars, health dollars.
Right.
They have so many strings to pull, little grants or whatever. Just say, okay, well, so if you're fine, then you don't get your dole. And then it's like, well, that's different because we have to have that. I thought that was free.
Yeah, I thought that just showed up, right?
That just grows on trees, right? No? Oh, we print that money?
Well, it's funny you say that, Travis, because if that were true, like I think this is a trope in Game of Thrones. They go, hey, if force is the thing that gives power, then how come all the knights aren't in charge? How come it's always the fat Weasley guy in the shadows and the little scrawny dude, doing his machinations in the corner?
Littlefinger.
Yeah, why is it the Littlefingers and the what's the fat guy's name in that show?
Yeah, can't remember.
Bald fat guy and Littlefinger. Why is it like some skinny little kid is the seat of that power? And it's the thing is, the guys with guns can come in and they're pretty effective. If things are chaotic, they're pretty effective at solving the chaos, right? Like if things really get shitty, like if you go to Afghanistan is like my penultimate example. Russians came in, they slaughtered this economy. It was mostly a market economy, and then they just kind of came in and blew everything up, right? They just wrecked the place. So it went right back to the old tribal warlord system, but the tribal warlords all came in and they were all squabbling amongst each other and fighting each other after the Russians left. And someone came along and said, hey, if we just adopt Islamic law and we all kind of band together, we can stop the chaos. We can stop people from we can stop all the madness and we can get some semblance of order back in. Guys with guns are great at doing that. But when it comes time to grow the country, make the country prosperous, make the country defensible, make the country this, that, and the other thing, either they stay as the guy with the guns in power, you get North Korea. If you want to see it blossom from there, the guys with guns like in North Korea have to blossom out and accept the machinations of the little scrawny, dealers in the background. And that's where the political power, political authority comes from. And I think you're starting to see that play out like in places like El Salvador. And you can see it very clearly play out in places like Singapore. Singapore was kind of in a mess. They had some sort of dictatorial control over that country or that little island nation. And now it's become a very powerful market force, but not because the guys with guns stayed in power. It's because the guys with guns made way for the people that know how to do that to come in. So I agree with you on some sense. Like, yeah, guys with guns can come in and, but guys with guns that try and seize power, that rarely works out well. And especially if there's a substantial portion of the population that is still beholden to the state, that becomes just civil war. And that becomes really, really messy. And right now, I don't even think there's enough political capital for the guys with guns to do anything right now, especially in the United States. We're nowhere near, or is it even remotely clear that something like that would be successful? But I know there are people on the margins that fuss for it and hope for it, but the reality of it is they just get crushed almost instantaneously. And, I don't think there's a lot of appetite here for a military coup. So we'll see. But I don't know. Let's get God involved.
We need a higher power to fix that solution. I don't see it being political. And when push comes to shove, and if say things do really break or things are just bad, or hey, you're cornered now, people, aren't you? And those of us with self-sufficiency, resources, property, say Bitcoin as well, I just think the ultimate enforcement cannot go door to door. That would be a different game. And really what you need to focus on is yourself, your family, your community, branch your circle as you can. But I think it's just incumbent on every individual to take care of themselves in that way. Now, step one might be, now this came up at Bitcoin Veterans, and big picture, but based ideas about this stuff is like, say, get out of the city. Get out of the city. I think cities would be where the mess occurs. Get yourself some property, get yourself a good wife, and figure out how you may, you may have to have your kind of a semblance of a fiat job or whatever that looks like. But man, get yourself as self-sufficient as you can and know where your resources and energy comes from and own that and get responsible with it. But I mean, that's hard. There's just not a lot of healthy people. And meanwhile, as World War II ravaged across France and farmers out in country land and stuff were just doing their thing. And it might be that things marched their direction or, bombed the town nearby, or, people came and went. But meanwhile, as a farmer, you could survive it and be all right. You're not going off to fight in the war.
Well, that's an example, but there's also a counterexample that happened in Russia. And you could say, hey, who died in the Russian slaughter? Well, it was the farmers. Who died in the Chinese slaughter? Well, the farmers.
Yeah, they did go town to town.
And so the idea of like, well, I can insulate myself by being in a state system under sovereign rule and under sovereign control by hiding in a field somewhere. I go, maybe. That's more dependent on what kind of regime is coming in and what their goals are in terms of trying to capture you as a resource. So there is some sort of fantastical, like daydreaming version of like how I can protect myself from that. But then there's also the reality of what those things unfold like and how they unfold. And that can be very different, and there are no truly self-sufficient people that I'm aware of, aside from maybe the Amish. But even they, resort to things like they get their steel from somewhere, and that steel comes from the fiat system. They didn't just, suddenly create a foundry and a forge, and they're taking raw materials and smashing it into, high tensile steel. So there is some sort of like, we exist in a sovereign system, period. There is no island off the coast of somewhere where you can go and say, hey, we are immune from sovereign authority, unless you got a wall of nukes. And that's North Korea again. You go, hey, how'd those guys get to stick around and be the thug in charge? Well, because he's got a nuke, man. Like, you can't do anything about that guy. You can threaten him. You can try and wall him off or whatever. But until you have a nuke on your little freehold farm or whatever, where you got your chickens and your fat wife making butter in the corner, you are still beholden to sovereign authority, sovereign capture, and sovereign rules. And, unless you can band together and get a group that is sizable enough to withstand state authority and state intrusion, and you have the means to back that up with a final fatal consequence, e.g., you might be able to overrun our 5,000 strong little militia here, but if you really push it hard enough, we're going to blow up Dallas with our nuke. When you have that kind of power, and you go, okay, now we are truly sovereign, right? Because no one can mess with you. You have a final ultimate option. You go, hey, you might wipe out 10,000 of us, 15,000 of us, 100,000 of us. We're going to take out New York City. We're going to take out Los Angeles, and you can't stop us. Then you've got a different game that you're playing, right? Then you become a sovereign force to be reckoned with. Absent that kind of power, the best you can hope to is ascend to political legitimacy. And that's what was like MS-13 was on that course in El Salvador. They were a gang of thugs that went around and basically took over the country. And all the NGOs and everybody was saying, hey, you guys should form a political party. So all these NGOs and all these other weak players in the game of competitive resource capture went, oh, well, gee, golly, wow, those guys are pretty powerful now. We should just accept them into the fold. But they didn't have a nuke. And they're also a bunch of banana heads. So they got, wrecked. But thank God for Nayib Bukele, who came in and strong-armed his way back in there and said, nope, we're going to pit the state against you. And if you can withstand state authority and state intrusion, then great. Then maybe we'll come to the bargaining table with you. But they couldn't. They weren't organized enough. They weren't smart enough, and they weren't clever enough. They were just out there thugging and doing things, like cutting people's heads off because they just enjoyed the short-term power. So they didn't rise to any political ascendancy, and the state intrusion, state authority wrestled control back from that gang of thugs. But, if MS-13 had a nuke, it's a different story, if that makes sense. And I agree with you. Things aren't bad enough right now. Like, we're not even close. Nowhere near.
We're soft. We are.
Dude, you can go to any soft mall in the country right now. Like I was, in Seattle. I'm here in LA right now. And if you just go and look at the restaurants, they're full. You go, hey, people are struggling. Well, not those people. They look like they're doing just fine. And the shopping malls are, people are still buying stuff, and Amazon's still in business, and things. There are a growing number of people that are struggling, but for the machinery writ large, it's still working as intended, best I can tell.
So under the paradigm of what we're talking about here, the current Bitcoin chopsolidation stuff is a nothing burger to me,
Yeah.
because I mean, yes, I want the protocol decentralized and secured, and I want it to not become a walled garden. I want more nodes out there, um, but the fiat price, it's small potatoes in comparison to the big resource capture game we're talking about.
Yeah.
When I was so slight aside story here. I know we're at an hour. When I had the weather got really nice on Wednesday, the day after the summit, and I had time. I had a few hours, and I just started walking from where I was staying, kind of in the direction of the airport, but just exploring Nashville. I'm wandering around. Literally, there's a sign for an old historic monument, state historic site. Randomly, the biggest Civil War fort built in the war, Fort Negler in Nashville, and it was a Union fort that was built, and there it is. It was on a hill just south of Nashville, had a view of the entire town, and to the south, across the Cumberland River, and where the Confederates had retreated to. But anyway, it put a lot in perspective for me of like, oh my goodness, now this is 1861, and so you could still see the outskirts and the internal walls of the fort intact, and there was a museum and all that. So the Civil War, you think about force and what was going on back then in the country. And Tennessee was one of the last states to join the Confederacy. They were kind of on the fence for a while. They were kind of divided, right? Being a little northern. But you had fathers and sons. That's where the splits occurred. Infighting in families, brothers against brothers, for different views on what was going on in the world. You had dad with the Union and the sons were with the Confederacy. And man, talk about a cultural challenge there. So
Yeah.
The Union, they had a big western kind of front and an eastern kind of front. They had two main divided focused spears piercing southward. And Nashville was the first big tip of the spear where the Union was like, our southwestern front is Tennessee. And they dove into Nashville. It was the Northern War of Aggression. That's right. Thank you for the correction. And so the Union came down and just crushed quickly Nashville, and then built a series of forts. But Fort Negler was the biggest one that I stumbled upon. And they built that fort. They just raised people's houses. They're like, we need to have a view here. We're tearing your house down. You have 2 hours. Move out. Slaves were retreating northward a bit at the time as well, and they were just scooping them up and putting them to work. The whole story there, but it put into perspective the nature of that war. The lines that were drawn. The Confederates had moved quickly across the river and to the south, but never got their foothold back. Basically, the Union swept in, drew their line, built their forts, and held it. And puts things in perspective a little bit in terms of, the challenges we face today and when we worry about what's going on in the world. But
yeah, I mean, the Civil War was a whole different sort of thing. Dominic Frisby did a really great video. I recommend anybody look it out or seek it out. But he talks about the sort of, I think, a more accurate picture of what the Civil War really was. And I think, I know it's sort of a Southern trope now, the war of Northern aggression. But I think if you look at the actual history of the Civil War, it's probably closer to the truth than, the Lincoln coming in and freeing the slaves and all this kind of stuff. Like that's the sort of historical, like, narrative, but that's not necessarily this historical fact. So I very much encourage anybody to look deeper into the history of the South and the Civil War if you really want to start tracking. If you want to get down to the next layer of stuff, it's a pretty interesting history. But
that could be a whole pod. So very economic in nature, wasn't it? I mean, when you boil it down.
Well, I mean, there was a whole series of like tariffs, and Lincoln was trying to preserve the sort of taxing authority that they had over the South more than anything. And there were all sorts of voices in the South saying, please, and there were even voices in the North going, please just accept this deal. Don't do what you're thinking about doing. And Lincoln went ahead and did it anyway. So, like I said, it's Dominic Frisby. He was on somebody else's podcast. He talks about it for an hour. I think he wrote a book about it, actually. But it's a really, really, I think he did an excellent job as a historian of chronicling what that whole thing was like. So it's what we get in the history books is a very sanitized version of everything, and that's true of all history. And it's not until you get down into the deep research that you start finding out what is probably closer to the truth of historical accounts of things. So it's definitely worth looking into. But yeah, like you said, we're in an hour, so I think it's pretty good time to.
Yeah. One anecdote I remember, and I don't remember the details, but that the union was running out of money. They didn't, and they couldn't just print it the way they do, and they really relied on a big old bank loan, a central bank loan, to fund what they were doing. And anyway, it went back to banks and lending. But anyway,
always the ledger. The ledger is the thing. It's not the gun. It's not the billy. It's not the knight. And it's not the mounted army. It's the ledger. He who can abstract, he who can tally, he who can track is he who is in control. So yeah. On that note, there's a great ledger you can buy into, have your own UTXO set, and sort of immunize yourself from some of these machinations. It's called Bitcoin. Highly recommend it. And if you're listening, you should run a node to help make sure it stays that way. Pretty please with sugar on top. Fire up a node. It's super important to keep that network layer decentralized, because the rest of it's a tulip bulb if it's not. So
to be on the right side of the future, take self-custody, run a node. Bitcoin.
Absolutely right. Well said, Fritz.
So instead of being on the right side of history, be on the right side of the future. That's a good one.
I love it.
All right. Hey, I'm gonna play one of our little promo deals for fun, because I got these things and I forget to like shill. I'm gonna wrap it up here today with a funny fun video of MicroSeed, and that'll be it, folks.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks, Marley. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, thanks all. You guys are awesome.
You too, Travis, I guess.
Yeah, I guess Travis is okay too. As a Bitcoiner, you know that taking self-custody is critically important. But if you've ever had a seed phrase, you've probably had it written down on something kind of like this. So get off paper and get yourself a MicroSeed at microseed.io. MicroSeed is the best way to take self-custody. Secure the most important property in the world that you own on titanium. You can also go to microseed.io to get any extra washers you need, including stainless steel, nylon, or even titanium washers. So check this out. You put your washer in here, you set the table, you grab your punches, and you tap, click, tap, click, tap, stamp whatever you want, however you want it. It's tiny but clean and aligned. MicroSeed comes with stainless steel washers, a titanium washer, and even a nylon washer. Think of metal detectors or having to travel through security. Get there today and get yourself squared away.